My name is Noreen Breen. My interest is in paramedics working in Ireland treating mental health patients. I am going to explore the opinions and attitudes of paramedics when treating the mentally ill. Paramedics form a major part of the emergency response to mental health patients during a crisis. The aim of this proposal is to identify the problems, attitudes and opinions facing paramedics when treating patients with mental health illness. My research proposal question is exploring paramedics' attitudes and opinions when treating mental health patients in Ireland. Mental health is defined by the World Health Organization as a state of well-being in which an individual realises his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. Mental illness is a term that refers collectively to all diagnosable mental disorders. Mental disorders are health conditions that are characterised by alterations in thinking, mood or behaviour, associated with distress and/or impaired functioning. Examples of mental health illnesses are major depression, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, anxiety and eating disorders, obsessive compulsive disorders, addictions, insomnia and panic disorders.
It all started in university during my final year.
It all started when I was 16. I came out of a relationship I was in at the time and I started purging and self-harming.
I first realised I had a mental health problem when I was 15. I was cutting myself every day and crying all the time.
Soon after the attack happened, I started to feel throes of anxiety, panic attacks started creeping in.
I first realised that I had a problem when I really wanted to stop all the things I was doing, but I just couldn't seem to stop no matter how badly I wanted to.
I was suffering from hallucinations, which at the time were really scary because I didn't know what was reality and what was my imagination.
At my worst, I felt like I was absolutely worthless, alienating and destructive, with no help of recovery.
I felt like I had this black cloud hanging constantly over my head, and it's just a feeling that stays with you and you can't seem to get away from it at all and you feel completely alone.
I felt like this was going to be it forever.
I felt as though I'd never reach any of my ambitions or my goals.
I felt like I was in my own bubble, hearing muffled voices of people around me.
When I had my first proper mental breakdown and I decided to run away from home.
I felt like the world would be better off without me.
My mental health problem means that I go through many highs and lows which I struggle to control.
Sometimes I just want to hide away.
I feel that I have to make everyone else happy and every day is a struggle, but I just remind myself that I'm strong.
My mental health problem means that sometimes the world can be a very scary, very dangerous and very dark place.
1 in 4 people worldwide will suffer with some form of mental illness at some stage in their life. Currently, 450 million people are suffering with a neurological or mental disorder, resulting in mental health disorders being at the forefront of global ill health and disability. In the United States of America, approximately 40% of patients attending emergency departments have a diagnosable mental health illness or an addictive disorder. Paramedics face increased challenges on a daily basis when treating and transporting mental health patients. There has been a noticeable increase in transporting patients with mental health problems. It has become evident that treating and transporting patients in a mental health crisis can be a challenge. In Australia, there has been a tenfold increase in patients presenting to the emergency department suffering with mental ill health over the last 10 years. In 2006, the amount of patients who presented to accident and emergency departments in the United States with a mental health diagnosis exceeded 4.6 million. People suffering with significant mental illness die prematurely, on average 25 years sooner than the general public. Injury and suicide causes approximately 30 to 40% of increased mortality, while 60% of people suffering with schizophrenia will die prematurely due to medical conditions like sepsis, cardiovascular disease and respiratory diseases. Unfortunately, approximately 40% of mental health and substance abuse sufferers receive no treatment. Those who eventually do pursue treatments do so after many years of delays, often leading to worsening and additional symptoms. Depression will be the single biggest medical burden on health by the year 2020. With the deinstitutionalisation of many mentally ill patients over the last 50 years, there is an increased number of patients being neglected in homeless situations and in prisons. Paramedics are under increased pressure to recognise and manage mental illness in a safe and effective manner. With increased mental health emergencies, paramedics are required to have advanced interpersonal skills when dealing with potentially chaotic and unpredictable patients. Research is required to examine this area further and to discover if there is a significant problem at present in Ireland. The proposed research will focus specifically on registered paramedics and advanced paramedics who work in pre-hospital emergency care in Ireland. It will look at their opinions and attitudes when treating mental health patients. The author aims to identify problems, attitudes and opinions facing paramedics when treating patients with mental health illness. The objective of this proposed research is to explore the nature of these opinions and experiences and determine if they are positive or negative. To discover paramedics' perceptions about how well and effective their treatment is when dealing with mental health patients. And to explore if increased training and education is required and whether it influences opinions. A qualitative approach will be used for this study. This will be in the form of a one-to-one semi-structured interview. The data will be collected from registered paramedics and advanced paramedics working in pre-hospital emergency care. The interviews for this data collection will take 1 hour approximately and will take place between August 2017 and September 2017. The semi-structured one-to-one in-depth interviews are effective at retrieving deep and meaningful information, personal accounts and experiences. It makes allowances for flexibility within the interview process. Question types will be formulated around questioning techniques on experience, feelings and knowledge, thoughts, memories and the individual's interpretations. Exploring, probing, prompting, pausing and summarising will all be used by the researcher to gain further knowledge in the area. An expert panel will review the planned list of questions for the interview. Interviews will be recorded on a small audio recorder. Consent will be sought before recording. Confidentiality will be maintained at all times. Participants may choose a pseudonym in order to ensure confidentiality, and participants may withdraw from the study at any time. A small sample size is adequate when the quality of the data is high and the content rich. A purposeful sampling method will be used. 10 to 12 candidates will be required. Inclusion criteria. registered paramedics and advanced paramedics working on an ambulance, a mixture of experienced, moderately experienced and recently qualified staff. Exclusion criteria. Paramedics presently working in-house or off the road for more than 6 months, and emergency medical technicians who will be less exposed to mental health emergencies. Ethical approval will be sought from the Ethics Committee at the University of Limerick and the National Ambulance Service Research Committee. The author wishes to use a room in the National Ambulance Service headquarters to hold the interviews. A letter will be sent to the Education Competency Insurance Officer requesting access. A notice will be sent to various stations inviting registered paramedics and advanced paramedics to participate in the proposed study. A letter will be sent out to those interested in participating in the study along with the participant information sheet. A consent form will be available and will need to be signed if participants agree to participate. There will be 3 copies of the consent form. The original copy will be kept by the researcher, 1 copy will be given to the participant, and the research sponsor will receive the 3rd copy. Informed consent will be sought from all the participants for the purpose of recording interviews. Confidentiality will be maintained at all times. If at any stage a participant withdraws from the study, their information will be disposed of confidentially and appropriately. The researcher will be seeking credibility through honesty and consistency from the participants. Methods and analysis of the study will be recorded with strict attention to detail, maintaining consistency and accuracy throughout. A reflective journal will be maintained throughout the study as a self-critical account of the research process. A pilot study will be carried out before the full research to test out the semi-structured interview techniques and the data collection procedures for the purpose of experiences for the researcher and to highlight any problems, with an estimated sample size of 10%. If during the interview the participant becomes distressed, or if memories are brought to the fore that causes distress, at the participant's discretion the interview will be ceased. A debriefing session will then be offered, and extra time will be given during the interview if participants experience some kind of distress, otherwise it would last approximately 1 hour. Data collection and data analysis occurs simultaneously. The researcher will move from collection to analysis and back and forth. It will consist of transcribing interviews verbatim as soon as possible after the interview, organising and sorting then storage of the data. Data will be stored in an organised and secure manner with coding and categorising. As previous literature has demonstrated, expected results will echo international studies and surveys. Australian paramedics expressed concerns in assessing and treating mental health patients due to poor mental health education. They believe that there is a lack of research into the clinical decision-making capabilities of paramedics. They also demonstrate a concern at not being sufficiently trained when dealing with acutely mentally ill patients. In a survey done by the College of Paramedics of its members, paramedics felt they did not have the required skills and knowledge to appropriately treat mental health patients. The author expects this study will provide an insight into paramedics' experiences when treating patients with mental health illnesses and allow them to express their opinions and provide recommendations for practice which may prove beneficial to future clinical practice. With increased challenges facing paramedics treating and transporting mentally ill patients, the author anticipates the results of this study will acknowledge the lack of training and education for paramedics when treating patients with mental health issues. Further research needs to be undertaken into the area of education and training of paramedics for optimal care of the mentally ill. No Irish literature was found in this area. This study will provide relevant information and lend factual evidence to the phenomenon of paramedics' attitudes when treating mental health patients in Ireland. It will acknowledge the difficulties faced by paramedics when treating patients with mental illness. It may have an effect on policy, training, education and society, highlighting this phenomenon and its consequences. The author hopes to educate paramedics and management on attitudes, bring awareness and possibly introduce an education programme. The expenses for the proposed study are as follows, with a total budget of €740. Enclosed are a list of supports in the event that the participant might need them.